What happens when a Hollywood legend walks onto a live daytime talk show and refuses to play along with the script everyone else seems to be following? Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. So, Robert, it's really great to have you here, Joy says with a practiced smile, turning slightly in her chair, cue cards resting lightly in her lap. You've had such an incredible career, and now you're speaking out more on current issues, which has gotten a lot of attention. Robert De Niro nods once calm, almost unreadable. Yeah, I say what I feel. There's a soft ripple of applause from the audience. Not overwhelming, but supportive. Joy leans in just a little. Right, and that's exactly what I want to talk about. Because some people feel like actors, especially ones with your influence, should maybe be more careful when stepping into political conversations. There's a slight shift at the table. One of the co-hosts glances sideways, already sensing where this might go. Robert doesn't answer immediately. He looks at Joy, then briefly out toward the audience, then back. Careful how? Joy keeps her tone light, but there's a firmness underneath it. Well, careful not to alienate half your audience. People watch your films, they admire your work, and then suddenly they hear you taking strong political stances, and it can feel divisive. A few scattered murmurs from the audience. Some nods, some frowns. Robert exhales softly. So what you're saying is, I should just stay quiet. Joy shakes her head quickly. No, I'm not saying stay quiet. I'm saying maybe there's a responsibility that comes with your platform. One of the other hosts jumps in, trying to soften the tension. I think what Joy means is people look up to you, so your words carry weight. Robert turns slightly toward her, gives a small nod. Everything carries weight. Not just what I say. There's a pause. You can feel the room tightening just a bit. Joy smiles again, but it's thinner now. Of course. But you've been very outspoken lately, and some critics have said your comments come off as dismissive of people who disagree with you. Robert leans back slightly in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. Well, it depends what they're disagreeing about. A few audience members clap quietly at that. Joy raises an eyebrow. So there are disagreements that you think aren't valid? Robert shrugs lightly. Yeah, there are. The co-host to Joy's right lets out a small, nervous laugh. Okay, we're getting into it now. Joy doesn't laugh. But who decides that, Robert? You. Robert looks at her directly now, more focused. No, reality does. There's a louder reaction from the audience this time. Some applause, some audible oh sounds. Joy leans forward, her tone sharpening just a touch. That sounds a little absolute. We're living in a time where people are encouraged to have different perspectives. Robert nods slowly. Different perspectives are fine. Ignoring facts isn't. The audience reacts again, this time louder, a mix of claps and a few scattered boos. One of the co-hosts quickly steps in. Okay, let's keep it respectful, everyone. Joy lifts a hand slightly, as if to calm the room, but her eyes stay locked on Robert. No one's talking about ignoring facts. We're talking about tone. The way things are said. Because sometimes it comes across like you're talking down to people. Robert's expression tightens just a fraction. If someone feels talked down to because I'm being direct, that's not the same thing. There's a brief silence. You can feel the shift now. It's no longer just a discussion. It's becoming something else. Joy tilts her head. But don't you think there's value in trying to understand why people feel that way? Robert pauses, then nods once. Sure. But that goes both ways. Another co-host nods quickly. That's fair. Joy doesn't let it go. But do you actually try to understand those people? Or do you just label them and move on? There's a sharper edge in her voice now, and the audience picks up on it. Low murmurs ripple through the room. Robert leans forward slightly this time, elbows near his knees, hands loosely clasped. His tone stays calm, but there's more weight behind it. I listen, but I don't pretend all arguments are equal when they're not. A louder reaction, some clapping, some audible disagreement. Joy sits back, crossing her arms briefly before uncrossing them again. That sounds like you're deciding which voices matter. Robert shakes his head. No, I'm deciding what makes sense. One of the co-hosts interjects quickly. I think what he's trying to say is, there's a difference between opinion and misinformation. Joy glances at her, but doesn't fully turn. And who defines misinformation? Robert answers immediately this time. Evidence. The audience reacts again, stronger now. A wave of applause, but also a few louder dissenting voices. Joy lets out a small breath, almost a laugh, but there's tension in it. You make it sound so simple. Robert looks at her steadily. Sometimes it is. That lands heavier than expected. The room goes quieter for a second. Joy leans forward again, her tone more pointed now. But when you say things like that on a public platform, it can feel like you're dismissing millions of people. Robert doesn't break eye contact. I'm not dismissing people. I'm disagreeing with them. Joy's voice rises just slightly. In a way that sounds like you think they're wrong and you're right. Robert nods once. If I think that, yeah. A louder reaction from the audience, this time more divided. Some clapping, some audible groans. The co-host next to Joy raises both hands slightly. Okay, this is getting intense. Joy turns briefly toward the audience, then back to Robert. Do you see how that comes across, though? Because it doesn't sound like a conversation. It sounds like a verdict. Robert sits back again, calmer now, but his voice is firmer. A conversation doesn't mean pretending everything is equal just to keep things comfortable. There's a noticeable pause. Even the co-hosts seem unsure whether to jump in. Joy presses her lips together for a moment, then speaks again. But this is exactly why people feel frustrated. Because instead of dialogue, it becomes, I'm right, you're wrong, end of story. Robert tilts his head slightly. That's not what I said. Joy responds quickly. It's how it feels. Robert shakes his head. Feeling something doesn't make it true. The audience reacts loudly to that, gasps, claps, a few sharp murmurs. One of the co-hosts leans in, trying to diffuse things. Okay, let's just take a breath for a second. But Joy isn't done. So people's feelings don't matter now? Robert's voice stays steady. They matter. They're just not the same as facts. The tension is now fully visible. The audience is leaning forward. The co-hosts are exchanging looks. Joy sits back slowly, her expression tightening. Wow, there's a long beat of silence. And you can feel it. This conversation isn't just a debate anymore. It's about to go somewhere much sharper. Joy sits there for a second, letting that wow hang in the air, and you can feel the audience leaning forward, waiting to see who's going to move first. One of the co-hosts tries to lighten it just a little. Okay, this is definitely one of those mornings. A few nervous laughs ripple through the crowd. Joy turns her head slightly toward her, then back to Robert. No, because I think this is important. I really do. Because what you're saying right now is exactly what a lot of people are frustrated by. Robert doesn't interrupt. He just watches her, listening. Joy continues, her tone measured but clearly charged. You're saying feelings don't equal facts, which fine on paper, sure, but when you dismiss how people feel, you're shutting down the conversation before it even starts. Robert shakes his head slowly. That's not what I'm doing. Joy responds immediately. It is though. That's how it lands. He leans forward again, a little more engaged now. You keep saying, that's how it lands. I'm telling you what I actually mean. There's a small reaction from the audience, some claps, a few murmurs of agreement. Joy lifts her hand slightly, cutting in. But communication isn't just about what you mean, it's about how it's received. One of the co-hosts nods quickly. That's true. Robert glances toward her, then back to Joy. So I should change what I say because someone might misunderstand it? Joy shakes her head. Not misunderstand, feel dismissed. Robert exhales, a little sharper this time. You're equating the two. The audience reacts again. This back and forth is starting to feel faster, tighter. Joy leans in. No, I'm not. I'm saying if millions of people feel talked down to, maybe there's something in the way it's being said. Robert's expression hardens slightly. Not angry, but more direct now. Or maybe there's something in how it's being heard. A louder, oh, from the audience. Some clapping breaks out. One of the co-hosts raises both hands again. Okay, this is turning into a tennis match. Joy doesn't smile this time. But that's exactly the problem. You're putting it back on the audience. Robert responds calmly. Because the audience has responsibility too. That line lands heavy. The room goes quieter again. Joy's voice sharpens. So now it's the audience's fault? Robert shakes his head. I didn't say fault. I said responsibility. Joy lets out a short laugh, clearly frustrated. That sounds like the same thing dressed up differently. Robert leans back, crossing his arms now. No, it's not. There's a pause, and for a moment it feels like both of them are deciding how far they're willing to take this. Another co-host jumps in, trying to redirect slightly. Let me ask you this. Do you think celebrities should even be part of these conversations? Because that's really where a lot of this comes from. Robert turns toward her. Everyone's part of the conversation. She nods. Right, but some people feel like celebrities dominate it. Joy adds quickly, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. You have a massive platform, and when you speak in such absolute terms, it can feel like there's no room for anyone else. Robert looks back at Joy. There's always room. People just don't like what I'm saying. The audience reacts again, this time more mixed. Some applause, some clear disagreement. Joy gestures slightly with her hands. It's not about liking it. It's about the tone, Robert. You come across like you're shutting the door. Robert responds, more firmly now. No, I'm not shutting the door. I'm not pretending every argument deserves equal weight. That sparks a louder reaction. Some claps, a few people audibly saying, "That's right," while others shake their heads. Joy's eyebrows lift. And there it is again. You keep deciding what deserves weight. Robert leans forward, voice still controlled but more intense. Because some things are based on facts and some aren't. Joy cuts in quickly. According to you. Robert doesn't hesitate. According to evidence. The audience reacts immediately, stronger applause this time, mixed with a few groans. One of the co-hosts tries again to soften things. I think what he's saying is, there are objective realities. Joy turns slightly toward her. I understand what he's saying. I'm asking about how he's saying it. Then back to Robert. Because when you talk like that, it sounds like anyone who disagrees with you is just wrong. End of discussion. Robert tilts his head. If someone is wrong, should I say they're right? A wave of reactions hits the room. Some laughter, some clapping, some tension. Joy leans back, almost incredulous. That's not what I'm saying. Robert presses, just slightly. Then what are you saying? Joy takes a breath, trying to reset. I'm saying there's a way to have these conversations without making people feel dismissed or belittled. Robert nods once. I'm not belittling anyone. Joy's voice tightens. It feels that way. Robert responds immediately. Again, that's a feeling. That line hits harder than the last one. The audience reacts loudly, gasps, claps, a few woes. One of the co-hosts leans back in her chair. Okay. Joy shakes her head slowly, a small, disbelieving smile forming. So we're back to that. Feelings don't matter. Robert's tone stays even, but there's no backing off now. They matter. They're just not the final word. Joy leans forward again, more direct than before. Do you hear yourself right now? Robert meets her gaze. Yeah, I do. There's a beat. The tension is thick now. Joy continues, voice rising just slightly. Because this is exactly why people get frustrated with public figures like you. You come on, you speak in absolutes, and then when anyone pushes back, you reduce it to that's just your feelings. Robert shakes his head, a little more emphatic. No, I'm saying feelings don't override facts. Joy responds instantly. But you're acting like you own the facts. The audience reacts again, this time louder, more divided than before. Robert's expression tightens just a bit more. I don't own anything. I look at the information that's available. Joy gestures toward him. And you interpret it your way. Robert nods. Yes. And I'm open to changing that if the information changes. There's a slight shift in the audience, some nodding, a few claps. Joy seizes on it. But are you really open? Because it doesn't sound like it. Robert leans forward again, voice a touch firmer. Yeah, I am. But I'm not going to pretend something is valid just to make people comfortable. That line lands hard. A wave of applause comes from one side of the audience, while the other side reacts with clear discomfort. One of the co-hosts tries to step in again. Okay, I think what we're seeing here is, there's a real divide in how people approach these conversations. Joy cuts in, not looking away from Robert. No, what we're seeing is someone who refuses to acknowledge how they come across. Robert responds immediately. And what I'm seeing is someone who keeps telling me what I mean instead of listening to what I'm saying. That gets a strong reaction, audible, "Oh," from multiple audience members. Joy pauses for just a second, clearly taken aback by that. Then she leans in, voice lower but sharper. I am listening. I just don't agree. Robert nods. That's fine. Joy presses. But you don't leave space for that disagreement. Robert looks at her steadily. You're disagreeing right now. That lands. The audience reacts, laughter, clapping, a few surprised sounds. Joy opens her mouth, then stops for a fraction of a second. And for the first time, she doesn't immediately have a comeback ready. The co-hosts glance at each other. The audience noise swells just slightly. And you can feel it. The balance of the conversation has shifted. The audience is still reacting when Joy leans back in her chair, blinking a couple of times, clearly recalibrating. There's a brief pause, the kind that only happens on live TV when nobody's quite sure who should jump in next. One of the co-hosts tries to smooth things over. Okay, I think what we're seeing is a really real moment right now. A few light claps from the audience, but the tension doesn't go away. Joy exhales, then leans forward again, this time slower, more deliberate. Let me ask you something directly, Robert. He nods slightly. Go ahead. Her tone shifts, less sharp but more pointed. Do you think people who disagree with you are uninformed? There's a quiet from somewhere in the audience. Robert pauses before answering. Some of them, yeah. That gets an immediate reaction, louder than before. Some applause, but also clear pushback, a few groans. Joy nods slowly, almost like she expected that. Okay, so that's what I mean. That right there. You just labeled a huge group of people. Robert doesn't flinch. I didn't say all of them. Joy responds quickly. But you said some. Based on what? Robert leans slightly forward. Based on what they're saying. Joy tilts her head. So if someone has a different interpretation of the same information, they're uninformed? Robert shakes his head. No. If their interpretation ignores the information, then yeah. The audience reacts again, some clapping, some murmuring disagreement. One of the co-hosts jumps in. I think what he's trying to say is, there's a difference between interpreting facts and denying them. Joy turns briefly toward her. I understand that. I'm asking about how quickly he jumps to that conclusion. Then back to Robert. Because it sounds like you don't give people the benefit of the doubt. Robert answers calmly. I do. Until they show me I shouldn't. That line lands hard. A mix of oh, and applause fills the room. Joy's expression tightens again. That sounds incredibly judgmental. Robert shrugs slightly. We all make judgments. Joy responds immediately. Not like that. Robert looks at her steadily. Yeah, like that. The audience reacts louder. This back and forth is now fully gripping the room. One of the co-hosts leans forward, trying to mediate. Okay, can I just say, this is probably what a lot of people are dealing with at their own dinner tables right now. A few laughs break out, easing the tension for half a second. Joy doesn't laugh this time. But here's the difference. Most people aren't going on national television and telling millions of viewers that their perspective might be invalid. Robert responds without hesitation. I'm not saying their perspective doesn't exist. I'm saying it might not be accurate. That sparks another wave of reactions. Strong applause from some sections, clear disagreement from others. Joy raises her eyebrows. And again, you're positioning yourself as the authority on what's accurate. Robert's voice stays calm, but there's a firmness now that wasn't there at the beginning. No, I'm positioning evidence as the authority. The audience reacts. This line hits big. Applause, a few cheers. Joy leans back slightly, shaking her head. But you're the one interpreting that evidence. Robert nods. Yes, and I'm open to being wrong if there's better evidence. Joy leans forward quickly. But you don't sound open. Robert responds just as quickly. That's your interpretation. Another, oh, from the audience, louder this time. One of the co-hosts covers her mouth briefly, half laughing, half stunned. Wow. Joy pauses, then gives a short, tight smile. You're very good at this. Robert tilts his head slightly. At what? Joy answers, her tone edged with sarcasm. At turning everything back around. Robert shakes his head. No, I'm just answering what you're asking. Joy's voice rises a little, in a way that avoids the point. Robert leans forward, more direct now. No, I'm addressing the point. You just don't like the answer. The audience reacts strongly, applause, a few gasps. Joy sits back again, clearly frustrated now. That's not fair. Robert responds, steady. It is fair. Joy gestures with both hands. You're making it sound like I'm the one being unreasonable. Robert looks at her, unblinking. I think you're focusing more on how things feel than what's actually being said. That line lands heavy, one of the biggest reactions yet. A mix of loud applause and audible pushback fills the studio. Joy lets out a sharp breath. So now I'm the problem? Robert shakes his head slightly. I didn't say that. Joy presses. That's exactly what you're implying. Robert answers calmly. No, I'm saying we're having two different conversations. There's a brief pause. That line shifts the energy again, less explosive but more pointed. One of the co-hosts nods. That might actually be true. Joy glances at her, then back to Robert. Okay, Then let's get on the same page. Robert nods. Okay. Joy leans forward, her tone now very direct. Do you believe there is value in how people feel about an issue, even if you think they're factually wrong? Robert pauses for a moment, thinking. The audience quiets slightly, waiting. Then he answers. Yeah, there's value in understanding why they feel that way. Joy nods quickly. Okay, good. So we agree on that. Robert continues. But that doesn't change whether something is true or not. The audience reacts again, some clapping, some murmurs. Joy's expression tightens again. But it should change how you talk about it. Robert shakes his head. It might change how I approach the conversation. It doesn't change the conclusion. That line hits hard. The audience reacts, another wave of divided responses. Joy leans back, clearly exasperated now. So we're right back where we started. Robert gives a small nod. Maybe. There's a brief silence. Then Joy says, more pointed than before, do you ever think that maybe the way you approach these conversations is part of the problem? Robert looks at her, steady and calm. Do you ever think that maybe avoiding direct answers is part of the problem? The audience erupts, loudest reaction yet. Applause, gasps, even a few people standing slightly in their seats. One of the co-hosts immediately jumps in. Okay, wow. Joy freezes for a second, clearly caught off guard by that. Then she leans forward again, her voice lower now, more controlled but sharper than ever. I'm not avoiding anything. Robert responds, just as controlled. It feels like you are. That word, feels, hangs in the air. The audience catches it instantly. A wave of oh rolls through the room. Joy's eyes narrow slightly. You see what you did there? Robert shrugs lightly. I used your word. A burst of laughter and applause breaks out. This time louder, more unified. Even one of the co-hosts can't help but laugh. Okay, that was something. Joy tries to respond, but for a moment, she doesn't have the same momentum she had earlier. She sits back, shaking her head slightly, a tight smile forming again. But this time, it doesn't quite land the same way. The balance of the conversation has shifted again, more noticeably now. And for the first time, Joy looks like she's not fully in control of where this is going. There's a strange mix of laughter and tension still hanging in the air after that last exchange. Even as the applause fades, you can feel that something shifted, not just between Joy and Robert, but across the whole table. One of the co-hosts leans forward quickly, trying to regain control of the segment. Okay, wow. This is definitely one of those conversations people are going to be talking about. A few audience members clap again, some still reacting to that last line. Joy straightens in her chair, adjusting her posture, her expression composed but tighter than before. Yeah, they probably will, she says, her voice measured. Then she turns back to Robert. Look, I think we both made our points. Robert nods once. I think so, but there's still something unresolved in the air. Joy adds, I just want to be clear because I know how these things get clipped and shared, that the goal here isn't to shut anyone down. It's to have a conversation. Robert responds calmly. I agree. She looks at him for a second longer, then says, even if we disagree on how that conversation should happen. Robert gives a slight nod. That's fair. There's a small, cautious round of applause from the audience. Less explosive now, more reflective. Another co-host jumps in, smiling, trying to lighten the mood. Okay, can we all just agree this is why live TV is unpredictable? That gets a laugh from the audience, and even Joy lets out a short, controlled smile. Unpredictable is one word for it, she says. Robert cracks the faintest hint of a smile. Yeah, the tension starts to ease, but it doesn't disappear completely. The co-host continues. I do think, though, this is something people are dealing with everywhere, families, friends, online. It's this balance between facts, feelings, and how we talk to each other. Joy nods. Exactly. And that's all I was trying to get at. Robert glances at her, then says, and I was just saying we shouldn't lose sight of what's actually true while we're doing that. A few audience members clap again, this time softer, more thoughtful. Joy doesn't push back this time. She just nods once. And that's where we see it differently. There's a pause, but it's not as sharp as before. It feels more like a closing than a clash. The co-host to the far side leans in. Okay, I'm calling a truce on this one, she says with a laugh. Because I don't think we're solving it today. The audience laughs along with her. Joy smiles a little more naturally now. Probably not. Robert adds, yeah, I don't think so. There's a lightness returning, but the weight of what just happened is still there. The segment begins to wrap, but you can tell the energy in the room hasn't fully reset. As the show cuts to a quick break and then returns for the final moments, the hosts are sitting a bit differently now. More composed, more aware of the moment they just had. Joy turns slightly toward the camera. Before we go, I just want to say, these conversations matter. Even when they get a little heated. A few knowing laughs from the audience. Robert nods. They do. Another co-host adds. And we appreciate guests who are willing to come on and actually engage, even when it's not easy. The audience applauds. Robert gives a small nod of acknowledgement. Thanks. Joy looks at him again, this time less confrontational, more measured. And we appreciate you being here. Robert responds simply. Thank you. There's a brief moment of eye contact. Less tension now, more mutual recognition that the conversation went where it went. The show signs off, the music plays, and the cameras pull back slightly. But the real story starts after the cameras stop rolling. Backstage, the energy is completely different. Producers are talking quickly, some replaying clips on monitors, others already discussing how the segment is going to be cut for social media. One producer shakes their head slightly. That's going viral. No question. Another nods. That you're disagreeing right now line? That's the clip. Meanwhile, in separate areas, both Joy and Robert are surrounded by staff. Joy is speaking quietly, but firmly with one of the producers. I just want to make sure the context stays intact, she says. Because you know how this goes. The producer nods. We'll handle it carefully. Across the hall, Robert is being thanked by another staff member. That was intense, they say. Robert shrugs slightly. It was a conversation. Within minutes, clips start circulating online. On platforms like X, Twitter, short segments of the exchange are already gaining traction. One clip shows the moment Robert says, "You're disagreeing right now." Another captures, "I used your word." Comments start flooding in. Some users praise Robert for staying calm under pressure, calling him direct, unfiltered, and unwilling to play along. Others defend Joy, saying she was asking important questions and pushing back in a necessary way. On YouTube, longer clips begin to appear within the hour, with titles framing the moment in dramatically different ways. Some lean in Robert's favor. Others lean in Joy's. The divide in the audience becomes even clearer online. Back in the studio, audience members who were there start posting their own reactions. One attendee writes about how tense it felt in the room, while another says it was one of the most real conversations they've seen on daytime TV. By the evening, entertainment outlets are picking it up. Headlines focus on the clash, the tension, the unexpected turns. Clips are analyzed, replayed, debated. And the moment keeps growing. The next day, the show addresses it briefly. Joy brings it up with a more measured tone. Yesterday's conversation got a lot of attention, she says. And I think that shows how divided people are right now, but also how much people care. The co-hosts nod. There's no attempt to recreate the moment. Just acknowledgement. And now it turns to you. Because moments like this don't stay on TV anymore. They live online, in comments, in debates, in conversations just like the one you watched. So what do you think? Was Robert being honest and direct, or was he too dismissive? Was Joy asking necessary questions, or pushing too hard? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.